filthy sewer, horrible immorality that what? Deserves and should be judged. You see, we would all look, especially some of you who maybe lived during that time. My dad fought in World War II. You looked at Hitler and the killing of 6 million Jews and the desire to rampage all of Europe and control the world. And you look at him and you say, this passage should apply to Hitler. You see, God is a righteous judge. He's angry with Hitler. If Hitler does not repent, God will sharpen His sword, and He's bent His bow and made it ready. God has also prepared for Himself deadly weapons, and He makes His arrows fiery shafts against somebody like Hitler. But see, here's the problem that you and I must come to grips with. Adam and Eve sinned one time. They broke one small commandment, didn't they? Well, it seems small. Don't eat of the fruit of the tree. But here's the problem. One sin before God is so horrible that it cast the entire universe into chaos and judgment and condemnation. So what I want you to see, what you must see before you can understand the magnitude of the love of God is your own sin. Jesus isn't merely doing us a favor. We weren't people who just needed a little bit of help. We weren't lost sheep looking for God. We weren't deserving of Him sending His Son. Do you see all that? Now that may offend you, but to be honest with you, it makes me happy. The more I see of what I really was and still am, the more I see of what I deserved and still deserve, the bigger God's love gets. Do you see that? It's like some of you women may understand this. A man who just thinks that he deserves everything you can give him. You sit there, you cook, you clean, you prepare the house, you try to keep yourself looking nice and everything, and the man just doesn't appreciate it. And when he doesn't appreciate it, you say, who do you think you are? You think you just deserve everything. Nothing I can do shocks you. You think you're worthy of every good thing I give you. And you look at that man and you say, he is so hard-hearted. Well, it's the same way. Unless you and I understand what we were, sinners, enemies of God, under judgment, deserving death, hell, condemnation, unless we understand all that, we kind of sit back like so many people do that actually think they're doing God a favor because they believe in His Son. And not being literally overwhelmed. I'll give you another example. I have stood on street corners here in the United States and preached, handed out tracts, handed out Bibles. And most of the people, they don't want to hear what I'm saying. They don't want a Bible. And I've had tracts crumbled up and thrown back at me. They just don't want it. Yet I've gone into third world countries, into deep dark places, and handed out Bibles. Little vinyl covered Bibles to believers, and had them come up to me weeping and kiss my hands. Why? Because they have nothing. They have nothing. So there's a sense that when we understand the darkness of our own heart and what we actually deserve before God, that then we can begin to rejoice and appreciate the love of God. That is why you will find oftentimes that people like me, who were saved, being the worst of the worst, drunkards or drug addicts or just people that society itself would say, this person doesn't even deserve to live. That when a person like that gets saved, they seem to be so full of zeal. Why? They know what they were. They've seen themselves in a mirror. And they're just literally overwhelmed. How could God love somebody like me? It must be all of grace. It must be all of God. It can't have anything to do with me. He must love me. Why? Because He's love. Do you remember, there is some degree of saying theologically that God has something, and this will offend some people, I guess, but God has something of a sense of humor. Because when Israel asked Him, basically, in a sense, why do you love us? He said, I loved you because I loved you. Well, why did you love us, though? Well, because I loved you. And what He's telling Israel, it's almost a taunt. What He's telling Israel is, look, Israel, I loved you because of me. I loved you because I am love. That's why I loved you. You could put it this way, negatively or positively first. Israel, I loved you because of me. I loved you in spite of you. Does anyone ever feel that way? I hope you do. I don't think you can be saved unless you feel that way. Now, you think, well, I don't like that. I do. Because if the love of God at the beginning had nothing to do with Paul Washer and did not depend on my ability to perform, then the love of God does not depend upon my ability to perform today. That means I'm loved because I'm loved and not because of my performance. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a very freeing thing. Let me give you an example. 2 women. Both of them, again, let's go back to a marriage illustration. Both women serve and seek to bless their husband with everything in their power. They wear themselves out seeking to honor and serve their husband. But one of the women is very, very just full of joy, peace, just a joyful spirit around the house. The other woman is wore out, worried, almost to the point of sickness. Now, what's the difference between the 2 women? Here's the difference. The one woman serves her husband, the one who is wore out and sick almost unto death. She serves her husband so that he will love her. The woman so full of joy serves her husband because he does love her. Just a few words are changed, but 2 worlds apart. Some people serve God so that God will love them. And if they have any understanding of the righteous requirements of God and their own sin, they'll be absolutely miserable because they'll realize no matter how much I serve God, I can't make my sin go away. And I can't serve Him as I ought. And if I've done everything I can possibly do to serve Him, I'm still condemned. But then there are people who are free. They're just free. They serve God because God does love them. Not only that, but while we were yet sinners, God loved us. Now think about that. While we were yet sinners. Now, I don't do this in detail because I don't want to break your heart. But just have a flashback, a moment of maybe the ugliest moment of your life. When you were the ugliest and dirtiest possible. Think back to one moment in your life when you said, that was the worst thing I have ever done. If you are now a believer in Jesus Christ, I can tell you that even at that moment, He loved you and was working to bring you to reconciliation through His Son. Now, if while we were sinners and enemies of God, He loved us to that degree, at the moment most ugly, of your life, if He loved you at that moment enough to send His own Son, how much does He love you now that you're reconciled to Him through the blood of His Son? Now again, a lost church member will go, hey, that's great, let's go sin. But a true Christian will say, if that's the case, then I want to serve Him more. I want to bless Him. I want to be devoted to Him. Now, let's go over and I want to show you a wonderful passage that presents one of the greatest problems, or the greatest problem, in my opinion, you'll see in the entire Bible. And it's found in the book of Exodus.